Well, hello everyone. I'm here today with my friend Lindsey DePeri, and we're going to talk about astrology and your relationship with food. I think astrology, relationship with food, there's no direct connection. And so I want to share a little bit of my personal story of how astrology found me, I guess, because growing up I've just always seen these, newspaper clips, that was my idea of what astrology is. And you read your horoscope and you think, okay, I'm going to have a good day, I'm going to have a bad day, and that was it. I thought that was what astrology was until this was actually only a year and a half ago. I came across a podcast where this woman, Deborah Silverman, which is so serendipitous because Lindsay actually trained with her, she was one of the teachers. And she was talking about how, there are some signs that are just more predisposed to secrecy, shame, and feeling so much emotions that they can't handle, and so they need to check out. And guess what those signs were? Pisces, Scorpio, what's the other water sign? Cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like Pisces, and also I have a Scorpio moon. So I was like, okay, double. And then when I was like, okay, I need to look up my natal chart. So I went on astro.com, looked it up, and I have I don't know, 5 or 6 planets in water. So I was like, oh my gosh, this explains a lot. And so it was from that snippet of just realizing that, you know, it's not that astrology sets things in stone. It's not like this is your fate. It's more just like if there are parts of you that you've always struggled with and you were like, why, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just have a normal relationship with food? Why can't I just feel my emotions and let them pass? Why do I have to get so attached to them and get taken for a ride? What's wrong with me? So when I kind of learned that through that podcast, I was like, wow, this goes really, really deep. It's not just like a little strip in the newspaper. You're gonna have a good day, you're gonna have a bad day. Watch out for this, watch out for that. It's like a god wasn't playing with dice when you were created, and and there's just so much more to it. And so that's why I invited Lindsay. Actually, when I first met you, I was already really excited. You didn't know this, but I was like, oh my gosh, she's an astrologer. But yes, so that's my little brief history of why I was so excited to invite Lindsay on. And I'll just give a little bit of an intro of Lindsay. So, Lindsay is an intuitive counseling astrologer, and she's also a hypnotherapist, as well as a hypnobirthing educator, as well as a past life regression healer. So, this girl is I don't know, just all of the things. She ticks all the boxes for me. So, I'm so excited to have you here, Lindsay. And so, given that very jumbled spiel, I know Mercury is retrograding, and my Mercury is in Pisces as it is. So, um, it'll be fun to see how this unfolds. Astrology really gave me that permission slip. It gave me just a sense of validation of actually, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. And here's how you can work with it. And then that's the empowering piece, right? Because when you understand these are the things that I'm predisposed to, but it's not a weakness. It's actually could be a feature. And how can I use this to help and to accept myself and to give myself the validation? All of these things. Have you found some kind of connection between people's natal charts and whether they're predisposed to having struggles with food or having body image issues? I'd love for you to just take the mic and yeah, go for it.
I love it. Well, thanks, Lulu. And since we've met, we've had so many fruitful and super engaging conversations about astrology and really, I think coming to this place of using astrology as a powerful tool for understanding who we are at the deepest level. Astrology has a very deep connection with our psychology and what is unconscious, the unconscious patterns, and that can show up as our mindset, how we're processing information, and the beliefs that we have created very early on in life, and also our healing journey in this lifetime. So what we are actually meant to be working through as the epic inner conflict or the epic tension that we are healing on a soul level, or that we're kind of working to resolve on a soul level. And I also love how you touched on using astrology as a tool for greater self-acceptance. And I think, one of the most transformative kind of states of being is in a state of deep compassion for ourselves or deep self-acceptance. So in general, in all of the work that I do, I'm using your birth chart. I'm working with you to use astrology to help you fall in love with yourself in a new way, and in a more complete way. Recognizing that, yes, these parts of us that may be painful or difficult or expressing in a way that is challenging, they're features. I love how you said that, right?
Yeah.
They're parts of us and they're parts of our humanity.
Yeah.
And I think also it's really powerful to work with your birth chart as a recipe for self-care and understanding how you
Mm.
need to be nurtured and how you need to care for yourself,
Yeah.
and recognizing your own um, personal language, like your own, like how to interpret your own messages from your body, from your intuition about what you need in the moment.
Yeah.
So I think all this really connects with the work that you're doing, and can lend itself really well to that. Because I think astrology really helps us to restore inner trust,
Yeah.
understanding our birth chart.
Can I jump in real
Please.
quickly? Because
Yeah.
like when you mentioned that like self-acceptance piece, that's really like that really was it. Like when I learned like that, I have a moon in Scorpio, right? And it's like conjunct Pluto, like in the sixth house, all of these things, which may not mean anything to you if you don't know about astrology. And it still doesn't mean much to me either. But when I learned that, there's this piece of shame was lifted because my whole life, like I've always felt like, why am I so dark? Like I have such a dark streak. I get these like really intense episodes, like and just feeling everything. It's like if a normal person, sees a cute kitten, they're like, oh yeah, cute kitten. I might see a cute kitten and start crying, like not because it's anything wrong, but just I'm like so moved by a cute kitten. And then other times, maybe something like quote unquote terrible happens and someone else is kind of like, oh yeah, that's terrible, but I still have to go and get the kids and whatever. Whereas I will be stopped in my tracks and just be like, this is horrible and can't, and I used to always feel like this is such a weakness. Like I need to overcome the fact that I feel so deeply and that I actually have such a dark streak in my personality as well. Like I'm not afraid of going into the shame and feeling through that now. But I used to think that was something wrong with me and that I had to like get therapy to fix it. But then learning through astrology, I've learned to embrace that darkness now and I feel myself like coming alive more. Whereas like it used to be like,
Mhm.
this is something that's a block that's always like hindering me. Like, how do I get rid of this roadblock? And now I'm just like, no, this dark piece, this is my medicine. I need to like extract it for all it's worth and bring it into my like solar personality, so to speak. Like it's like actually this dark lunar aspect is actually very much an underpinning that brings more brightness to my solar energy. So it's like, just a huge exhale. Like the
Mhm.
fact that I don't have to keep fixing this dark part of me and pathologizing it. So that was my quick interruption. Just on what
I
you,
love that.
yeah,
And there's so much freedom that arises for us that arrives for us when the walls can come down, when we can lift shame and we're not fighting against ourselves. And I think, astrology is just a powerful tool for helping us not to be at war with ourselves
yeah,
and saying, this is a problem that I need to fix, or I need to
yeah,
not be this way. Because astrology is really is about embracing your true nature, the truth of who you are. And that's your
yes,
chart. Your chart describes the truth of who you are. And so and you can say, these are these parts of me, this medicine. I love how you use that word. And it's also, these are your superpowers, right?
I love
Very
that.
powerful, like Moon Pluto alignment in Scorpio. I mean, that's a superpower. And so this is alchemy also, like when we can shift how we're regarding ourselves, how we're meeting ourselves, we can alchemize something that we're experiencing as, it's a detriment.
Mm,
It needs to be managed. It needs to be suppressed in some way. And I think that really connects with um, our relationship with food, right? Like,
yeah,
how are we meeting ourselves and our needs? And also, what are we maybe trying to override? Or, like you said, I loved how you were mentioning about um, escaping really big
yeah,
emotions, or escaping ourselves in some way and numbing out.
yeah,
And then we become disconnected and detached. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Like that's a
mhm.
really great segue because I was just thinking about my own chart and then my relationship with food. And the thing that really came up for me is that like so in eating psychology, one of the key components I tend to work with is people's, especially if it's a woman, which I tend to mostly work with women, a woman's relationship with food is very much like parallel to their relationship with their mother. And because, so in this context, when we're growing up, our first example of how to nurture ourselves, how to care for ourselves, really came from our mother, right? And when a baby is born, they're very much at one with mother until maybe a year later, I want to say, I'm not sure. But, we're very intertwined with our mothers in the very early age period of our lives, right? And so we kind of just absorb everything about her and kind of take it in as our own. And what most people don't realize is that a lot of our issues with food and with wanting to fix our bodies actually came from our mother, or if not directly from her, from that line of women, of how the family, is structured. And so moon really, like, to me, like, symbolizes mother, and like nourishment seems to symbolize mother, and love is also like symbolizing mother and how you care for yourself, right? And so I was wondering, do you have any insight, or do you, like, from the work you've done, or if you're just kind of theorizing, do you think there's like a strong connection between someone's like moon placement as a possible indicator of what their relationship with food might be?
Mhm. Absolutely. So there's a few things that I've in my work and in my practice, I have seen some trends
Mm,
around signatures in the chart, meaning placements of a planet in a sign and or a house,
mhm.
and challenging relationships with food, or distortions around like the body.
Yeah.
I've also seen, so mother. I mean, this is a really core and um, uh, important aspect of the chart, and so critical to look at and understand when we're trying to understand ourselves deeply.
Mm,
And you're right, absolutely. So the moon in your chart, in your birth chart, the moon describes your experience of mother.
mm.
So it is very closely tied to mother, and very intimately, very literally connected with, again, your experience of mother. And so from mother, and the word mother, the
Mm.
origin of the word mother literally means the one who feeds.
Wow.
So there is,
Yeah.
so then there's absolutely this connection between the moon, our experience of mother, and how we feed or nurture ourselves, how we learned to feed or nurture ourselves.
Mm.
So from mother, we also learn how to cope with stress.
Oh.
So our moon describes how we cope with stress. And so in certain placements, if the placement is challenging or difficult,
Mm.
we might cope with stress by escaping,
Yep.
dissociating,
Yep.
numbing out,
Yep.
to cope. So there's a deep connection there. And um, it can also, yeah. So, and it can also just describe like how we relate to our own needs. So if there is,
Mm.
for example, some signatures, you know, we often look at the moon in Capricorn, for example, as being a very difficult placement,
Yeah.
or
My
the
mother
most
has a moon in
difficult placement,
Capricorn.
right? Most difficult placement for a moon to be.
Oh my gosh.
Um, it can also be moon in Virgo. These
Yeah.
signs, moon in Capricorn can be more detached.
Uh-huh.
Moon in Capricorn may have learned at an early age that I need to be strong for others and suppress emotions.
That's my mother. Oh my gosh.
Right. And it can be very difficult to connect with their own emotions because Capricorn is very stoic and it's very strong.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Moon in Virgo, is another example. Virgo is the perfectionist or the inner critic.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so
yeah.
Moon in Virgo may
Yeah.
have learned at an early age that I need to um, kind of be vigilant. Like I need to
Mhm.
be that I constantly need to be aware that of like what's expected of me, and
Yes.
it's not enough, and we can internalize. The moon can really describe what's going on deep within the subconscious because we've internalized these ways of being
Yep.
at a time when this like when these imprints were being first made on us in these really kind
Yeah.
of primal early stages of life.
Yeah, yeah.
So I do think there is a deep connection between the earth and the water signs and
Yeah.
our relationship with food and self-nourishment.
Yes.
And
Yes.
interesting because in astrology we have four elements: earth, air, fire, and water.
Hmm.
And two are masculine, two are feminine, and the
Mm.
the earth and the water signs are the feminine signs.
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and the water signs, I think, can really describe how we relate to how we learned to process emotions at an early age,
Hmm.
and whether or not we learned to prioritize or sacrifice those emotions or those needs.
Yeah. Yep.
And then literally how we nourish ourselves. Like Cancer rules the moon, or the moon rules Cancer. I'll say it that way, actually.
Hmm.
And again, the mother, moon is associated with mother. Mother is the one who feeds, and Cancer
Yeah.
is literally about how we nourish ourselves.
Yeah.
So just that through line, these connections. Um, and I think it's through the water signs and the earth signs that we learn to like put our emotions into context in how we're relating in the world. First with our
Yeah.
family, and then more broadly, like in other relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
like, Lindsay, like, just I'm theorizing as I'm listening to you, and I'm making it up, but like, I feel like, would you say that it's like there's like a seed of truth in the statement that if you have a lot of water, or a lot of earth in your chart, I guess it depends on where they are placed, right? Do you think that makes you a little bit more susceptible to just always being critical of your body? Like, this is never good enough, and always like struggling with how do I take care of myself because, my work is more important. Who cares about, how I do? And it's all about, do you find there's like,
Yeah, I
I'm just
think
theorizing because like I'm just feeling like, because if you have a lot of like water in your chart, it feels like, you'll feel things more deeply, right? Things can feel like they're in fact like not fathomable. But then say someone, that has a lot of air or fire, that's like the opposite, right? Like, the air is like much more rational, much more logical, and you just kind of get it done, you know. So I'm just theorizing, like is it that if you tend to have more of the water placements and earth placements in your chart, then it could be a sign that like, you might struggle a little bit more with food than someone who just has like predominantly fire or predominantly air.
right. Yeah. I mean, I wish it was that simple and
Yeah.
straightforward.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I would not say
Mhm.
that. What I would say that, your relationship with the element of water, this is
Mhm.
how I kind of speak when I'm talking about astrology and talking about a chart.
Mhm.
Your
Mhm.
relationship with the element of water is going to describe how you meet yourself at an emotional level, like
Okay.
how you and how you process emotions and how you experience emotions. So
Mm.
what I would say is if the water element is really strong, you
Mhm.
feel emotions in a big way,
Mhm.
and that can lead to feeling overwhelmed or overloaded. And then it can be difficult to kind of be present to
Yeah.
that intensity of feeling. And that can
Mhm.
lead to having developed coping mechanisms that
Yeah.
involve dissociating or checking out,
Yeah.
numbing out and escaping.
Yeah.
I would also say that if there is a lot of earth and
Mhm.
not a lot of water,
Mhm.
then you're likely more practical, more connected with like survival needs.
Mm.
That there's some messaging around kind of being strong and steady, often
Mhm.
for others, or to tend to um, uh, sort of the physical practicalities of life. And
Mm.
there may be some disconnection with what you're needing on an emotional level,
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
First house is also really important.
I was just about to mention that. Yeah, I was like, I have Chiron in my first house, and that's like, that's like a wound, right? It's like I call
Yes,
it the wounded healer because, like, because
absolutely, it is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the first house is really describing how your experience of yourself, your
Mhm.
self-image,
Mhm.
and it can also represent like your vitality. So what I have seen
Mhm.
consistently in
Mhm.
charts where I've worked with people who have challenging relationships with food or self-image
Mhm.
is um, is a difficult placement in the first
Mhm.
house. That can absolutely be Chiron. I've seen that many times,
Uh-huh.
especially Chiron in Cancer can also be be a factor. Saturn or Neptune. So Chiron can create feelings of deep insecurity
Mhm.
and a challenge around meeting our own needs.
Mm.
It can also show up as some form, Chiron is the wounded healer. We can alchemize all of these placements. But when Chiron is in the first house, we're learning to overcome a deep feeling of insecurity or unworthiness.
Oh my gosh, I feel like you're just like thinking it and how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neptune in the first house can significantly distort our self-image.
Oh, that makes
Right? So
sense.
we're not seeing ourselves clearly,
Yeah.
or we're not as tuned in to what we're needing, and it's harder to meet our own needs.
Mhm.
It can also be harder to feel pain. It can also be harder to feel the pain that's caused by denying ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Saturn represents a constraint, so it
Mhm.
can show up as kind of again suppressing or
Yeah.
downplaying our needs,
Mhm.
or prioritizing the needs of others over ourselves, like a sort of a feeling of pressure to meet a certain expectation or fulfill a certain type of image,
Mhm.
and then to kind of like to deny what's going on kind of
Yeah.
behind that shell,
Yeah.
right? To be disconnected. So first house I think is really important.
Mm.
Also the ascendant,
Mhm.
really important.
Mhm.
It can also be seventh house too, because the seventh house has
Mm.
to do with how our relationships and what we understand about ourselves through relationships, or like
Yeah.
how we prioritize, how we compare ourselves to others.
Ah.
And then 10th house. 10th house is also really important because this is how we're meeting the world.
Yep.
So if there's a difficult placement in the 10th house, then we're having trouble kind of fully being seen or fully like expressing ourselves into the world.
Mm.
So, these kind of relate to identity and relationship. And then the water houses, so
Yeah.
fourth, eighth, 12th,
Yeah.
are all going to tell a story about what's going on in the deeper layers of our psychology. So I think it's very much about, it's about the story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
charts are so unique and they're so
Yeah.
different. Like the chart of the day you were born doesn't repeat itself for 26,000 years. And so, we can't get to like and I think it's a good thing, right? Like there isn't this like hard correlation or determination. We don't have this like
Yeah.
way of determining,
Yes.
but there are links and there are common threads.
Mm.
Definitely first house, definitely a relationship with, in particular, the water and earth signs, in particular, Cancer, Pisces, Virgo, Capricorn. Um,
Mm. Mhm.
any hard aspects to the moon or sun,
Mhm.
Pluto moon, so intense.
Mm.
And Scorpio, Taurus, like, Scorpio is about very much about how we relate like how we're perceiving our own needs and
Mm.
then putting those into perspective with the needs of others.
Mhm.
All the water signs can, these signs can all be quite self-sacrificing. Um,
Oh, wow.
and Taurus can have to do with our relationship with abundance. I think scarcity mindset, scarcity abundance can translate into challenges within our relationships with food. So I think it's very much about the
Mm.
story,
Yes.
because it's through the story that we
Yeah.
can, that the walls can come down, that we can
Yeah.
kind of, that we can meet ourselves with greater compassion
Yeah.
and start to understand what we actually need
Yeah. Yeah.
or why it's difficult.
Yeah. I also heard like you were mentioning the Taurus and Scorpio thing too. Like I have a Scorpio moon, Taurus rising, and like I remember hearing this somewhere that like this particular like opposition, I guess, you're like emotionally orientated to look for both comfort but also pain. Like it's like this kind of strange, like it's like you actually come alive through pain. But you also really need comfort because you're so vulnerable. So it's like, wow, that, like, and I've always found that the language of astrology cuts so much deeper than like just the everyday, like, oh, you need to relax more or whatever. But when you talk about like this, like just because I guess they're archetypes, right? These are like archetypal energies and it's symbolism. And these are like the deepest language of the psyche, isn't it? Like I remember you saying, I think it was you that told me that like Carl Jung, like he wouldn't work with people until he saw their natal chart because he really understood the importance of if you're gonna, work on psychology, you got to look at their natal chart. Like otherwise, it's just kind of fruitless. You're just gonna be talking in circles. But you really need the depth of language that astrology brings to really give you that sense of like really being seen. And it's not like analytically describing everything, but it's just the sense of like, wow, I felt that, you know? And as a bit of an aside, like this is why I think, because like people talk about AI all the time, about how like AI is taking over, is doing this and that and that and that. And I can't help thinking that it's like it is never going to reach that level because AI does not have a body and it does not have that depth that, these symbolism and mysticism and that has, which can only really come through being present with other people you know? And that's how I think of it. I just think like there's not really a threat. Like AI can do stuff that doesn't matter. But when it comes to things that really matter, that really need to actually touch people's hearts and actually go on a deeper level into their bodies, it's like only humans can do that with, with like the knowledge that we've gained over millennia of like observation and just, I think astrology is almost like channeling as well, because you can learn all of these things but how you interpret it and how that comes through for you in that moment when you're sitting with someone, like you can't control that, like it comes out. And I think that's the magic of it. It's like, I feel like astrology is like channeling a deeper wisdom that we all have access to. But we
Mm.
kind of don't want to look at it because we want to be logical and want to be like, but give me the hard facts. But so much of the time I find like, especially when it comes to healing your relationship with food and with your body, I think that's one of the hardest things you can ever do because you are living with yourself all the time, like, and this body is with you all the time, like you, you can't really escape it, right? And so like the deepest level of healing, I think really comes from actually acceptance, not like figuring out how to work around my weaknesses. It's actually just like taking it all in and being like, this is who I am. And Yeah, astrology is just, it has been so, so helpful for me in coming to that level of self-acceptance that I could not have come to with like any form of like just talking therapy, talking about my childhood. Like, doesn't even come close. Like the level at which astrology has helped me come to the acceptance, which I think is still unfolding, right? It's like a forever thing. I don't think you ever get there. But yeah, that's I just wanted to share that. I just think it's so deep, the language and the symbolism, it just hits so deep and it heals in a way that is not like repeatable. What's the word? Like imitable. You just it's in its own, category of the level of healing that it provides through
Mm,
self-acceptance.
mm. I think, in this technological age that we are living in, there is more and more a need to recognize what it is that makes us human.
Yeah.
And astrology gives us a framework for understanding who we are through a more mystical lens,
Mhm.
but also as you mentioned, on the level of archetypes.
Mhm.
And what are archetypes? They are really these primal essences of our nature. The zodiac really just taps into these core principles, these archetypal principles. And what is the zodiac? The word zodiac literally means the wheel of animals. And
Wow.
there's a reason why so many of the zodiac signs are associated with animal emblems, right? Animal symbols. And if you go back far enough in history, even some of the signs that, for example, Gemini is the twins, if you go back
Mhm.
far enough, you find that it was also associated with an animal spirit earlier
Oh.
on.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the when we connect with kind of when we understand, when we see the archetypes as being animal, as being primal,
Mhm.
as being kind of these raw parts of us that can be wounded, that have
Mm.
instinctive needs and urges, that can have, rage or anger. They respond in very primal ways. And I think that can really help us to understand how to meet ourselves on that level of like addressing our most primal needs, our most essential
Mm.
needs. And I think there is a like a balance that needs to emerge, that is emerging, as a result of living in such a technological kind of
Yeah.
paradigm and way of being and relating, and working in the world, to remember and um, reconnect with these parts of us that are really essential to our humanity and have,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's where the depth is, and that's where
Yeah.
the complexity is. And I think, yeah, astrology really helps us with that.
Yeah. And how much of it is shared too, right? Like, I guess all of it, because, when we're suffering, it feels like we're on our own. We feel like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm having these thoughts. But the truth is, like, everyone has these thoughts, like everyone has that to some extent. And I think if you can just accept that, actually, like, I'm saying this because you were mentioning this shared humanity, this just remembering our humanness, and with this animal nature, there was a saying, I don't know who said it, but that like that humans are somewhere between like the beasts and the gods or something. And I think we tend to like strive too hard to like be be like God, be holy, be like above it all, and we forget like that we have these animal bodies, and so much about healing your relationship with food is really about actually meeting your real needs that something else was covering up, so like yeah, so getting in touch again with our bodies, with our animal bodies, is like so actually key to to having peace in this life, like it's accepting that we actually have that too, and not trying so hard to escape it or to think that we're like above that, or that's so primal and that's so barbaric or whatever, right? But it's like, no, this is actually like your core, and you need to learn to work with this and the divine. It's a bit of both.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you look at your story as not necessarily a journey of like, ambition or,
Mm.
being fitting a mold, but
Mhm.
more of a journey of healing, I think
Yeah,
that can help for, again, the walls to come down and to create space to be curious about what is my story of healing in this
yeah,
lifetime.
yeah.
Um, yeah. And that connects with the work that I do around using astrology to understand past life influences. But that's a
Mhm.
story. That's a
Yeah,
conversation for another time.
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Lindsay. So before we wrap up, Could you please share like how we can get in contact with you and book readings and like, or just anything that you're excited to share about at the moment?
Yeah. So my website is divineoriginswellness.com. You can find me there, and I work in person. My office is in Old Town Lafayette, Colorado, which is just outside of Boulder, or virtually.